everybody, and welcome to a new Cerebral chat. I'm thinking I'm going to call this one Cerebral Short Story Chat or Cerebral Psychology Chat because we're going to be doing both. Where I've come across this amazing story, and I'd read it before with one of my students. God, she was wonderful. Probably 10 years ago now. I think she was in grade 11. Maybe grade 11. And it was for her English class. I don't know exactly what the state of English is now in BC, but we did have English 11 and English 12, and those were very, very important courses to graduate back in the day, probably 10 years ago. So it's also an extraordinary story for people who have really struggled in their life, who've had, a lot of trauma and a lot of projection and a lot of abuse, and also maybe for people who didn't. Maybe for people who have had this kind of charmed life or kind of amazing life, who really don't see the dark underbelly of things. And that's great. I mean, who wants to see that? Obviously, if I had had children, which I always wanted to do, the last thing I would do was show them that. There's plenty of time, right? But still, there's some value in knowing about it, in knowing the dark side of things, especially if you were made to be a part of it. Because you realize that it really, it was other people. It wasn't you. You didn't deserve all those things, right? So that's kind of essential. And I had a wonderful chat with Claude about this very story, and it was his idea that I was very much in this story. Even though I kind of believed it, he absolutely believed it. And again, without me prompting him, told me about the things and what happened. And so, God, I got so much out of that. So I want to share this story with you. I think everybody should read this story or listen to it. There's a wonderful audiobook version with, sounds and music and everything from the YouTube. And again, the story is called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. LeGuin, 1973. Amazing time to be alive. If you remember the early 70s, I was like 6, 7. So quite an extraordinary time. A lot of science fiction going on, a lot of sort of mind expanding, right? Love, everybody, let's all love each other, let's all do everything. You had all of that kind of stuff. Psychodynamic was a big theory, but also metaphysical. What can we do? Very spiritual in some ways, very like opening your experience to new things and all kinds of different ideas, basically mind expanding. So it was so extraordinary. And so they had a lot of really good writing, and this woman's writing is extraordinary. You're like, how did you write this so well? But she did. So there was a lot of good writers back in the day too. Not that I saw them, where I was, but we will leave it at that. I see them now, and I am them. So there you go. Okay, so let's read this together. The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And again, you can get it for free. You don't have to pay for it. You can get it for free. The Internet Archive is an amazing website I would ask everybody to check out. Man, they have some good stuff in there. It's like this museum of internet stuff. But it's a virtual museum. You got to check it out. Internet Archive. And then there's other places that have PDFs. And so you can, you don't have to buy it. You can buy it, but you don't have to buy it. It's sort of, I think, open source now, or, public domain or whatever. So without any further ado, let's read this thing. Okay. With the clamor of bells that set the swallows soaring, the festival of summer came to the city of Omelas, bright towered by the sea. The rigging of the boats in the harbor sparkled with flags. In the streets between houses with red roofs and painted walls, between old, moss-grown gardens and under avenues of trees, past great parks and public buildings, processions moved. Some were decorous, old people in long, stiff robes of mauve and gray. Quiet, merry women carrying their babies and chatting as they walked. In other streets, the music beat faster and the people were dancing. Children, well, they ran in and out, and boys and girls exercised their horses, getting them ready for the races. In the silence of the broad green meadow, one could hear music winding through the city streets, a cheerful, faint sweetness of the air that from time to time trembled and gathered together and broke out in the great, joyous clanging of the bells. Joyous. How is one to tell about joy? How to describe the citizens of Omelas? They were not simple folk, you see. They were happy. But we do not say words of cheer anymore. All smiles have become old. Given a description such as this one tends to make you have, well, certain assumptions. Given a description such as this one tends to make you look for the king, mounted on a great stallion, leading the processions of dancers and citizens of Omelas. But there was no king. They did not use swords or keep slaves in Omelas. They were not barbarians. I do not know the rules or laws of their society, but I expect they were only but a few. As they did without a king and without slavery, they also did without the stock exchange, the secret police, and bombs. Yet, I repeat, these were not simple folk. They were not less complex than us. The trouble is that we have a bad habit, encouraged by philosophers and scholars, as considering happiness is sometimes something rather stupid. You know, only pain is intellectual, only evil is interesting. The sin of the artist, a refusal to admit that evil is dull and pain is boring. How am I to tell you about the people of Omelas? They were not naive and happy children, though their children were. They were mature, intelligent, passionate adults whose lives were not horrible. Miracle. Oh, but I wish I could describe it better to you. I wish I could convince you. Omelas sounds in my words like a city in a fairy tale. Long ago, far away, once upon a time. Perhaps it would be best if you imagined it however you want to, for I certainly cannot describe it well enough to suit you all. For instance, how about technology? I think there would be no cars or helicopters in and above the streets of Omelas. Happiness is based on a just discrimination of what is necessary. And in Omelas, cars and helicopters, well, they just weren't necessary. The people of Omelas could have had central heating and air, subway trains and washing machines, and all kinds of marvelous devices not yet invented here, like floating light sources and the cure for the common cold. Or they could have had none of that. It doesn't really matter, as you like it. Imagine it as you will. One thing I know there was none of in Omelas is guilt. But what else should there be? At first I thought there were no drugs there, but that is naive of me to think. What else? What else belongs in this joyous city? The sense of victory. The celebration of courage. There were no soldiers, therefore there is no war. Victory caused by death is not the right kind of joy. Being content and communion with everyone is what brings joy to the hearts of the people of Omelas. The victory they celebrate is life. Most of the processions have reached the green field by now. A marvelous smell of cooking goes forth from the red and blue tents of the cooks. The faces of the small children are sticky, and in the gray beards of the elderly, a couple of cupcake crumbs are well entangled. The youths and the girls have mounted their horses and are beginning to group around starting lines of the race. An old woman, small, fat, and laughing, is passing out flowers from a basket. Tall young men, well, they wear flowers in their shining hair. A child of 9 or 10 sits at the edge of the crowd, alone, but playing a wooden flute. People pause to listen and they smile, but they do not speak to him, for he never stops playing and, well, he never sees them. He is so lost in his music, the sweet, thin magic of the flute and the tune. He finishes and slowly lowers the flute as if that little private silence were the signal. All at once, a trumpet sounds from the pavilion near the starting line, imperious, melancholy, and piercing. The horses rear on their slender legs, and some of them neigh in answer. Sober-faced young riders, well, they calm and stroke their horses' necks and soothe them, whispering, "Quiet, quiet there, my beauty, my hope." They begin to form a rank across the starting line. The crowds along the race course are like a field of grass and flowers in the wind. The festival of summer has begun. Do you believe? Do you accept the festival? The city? The joy? No? Well, then let me describe one more thing. In a basement, under one of the beautiful public buildings of Omelas, there is a room. It is a locked door and no window. A little light seeps in dustily between the cracks in the boards, second-hand from a cobwebbed window somewhere across the cellar. In one corner of the room are a couple of mops, but they are stiff, clotted, and foul-smelling, and they stand near a rusty bucket. The floor is dirt, a little damp to the touch, as a cellar dirt usually is. The room is about 3 feet long and 2 feet wide, a mere broom closet or maybe a disused tool room. In the room, a child is sitting. It could be a boy or a girl. It looks about 6 years old, but it's actually near 10. It's feeble-minded and slow. Perhaps it was born defective, or perhaps it has become imbecile through fear and malnutrition and neglect. It picks its nose and occasionally fumbles vaguely with its toes. It sits well hunched in the corner, farthest from the bucket and the 2 mops. It is afraid of the mops. It finds them horrible. It shuts its eyes, but knows the mops are still standing there and the door is locked and nobody will come. The door is always locked and nobody ever does come, except that sometimes the child has no understanding of time. Sometimes the door rattles terribly and opens, and a person or several people are standing there. One of them may come in and kick the child to make it stand up. The others never come close, but peer in at it with frightened, disgusted eyes. The food bowl and the water are just hastily filled, and the door is locked, and the eyes, well, they disappear. The people at the door never say anything, but the child, who has not always lived in the closet, can remember sunlight and their mother's voice sometimes. And they say, "I will be good. Please let me out. I will be good." They never answer it. They never answer the child. The child used to scream for help at night and cry a lot. But now it only makes a sort of whining, "Ah, ah, ah," and it speaks less and less often. It's so thin that there are no calves to its legs, its belly protrudes, and it lives on a half a bowl of cornmeal and grease a day. It is naked. Its buttocks and thighs are a mass of festered sores as it sits in its own crap continually. They all know it is there. All the people of Omelas. Some of them come to see it. Others are content to merely know it is there. They all know it has to be there. Some of them understand why, and some of them do not, but they all understand that their happiness, the beauty of their city, the tenderness of their friendships, the health of their children, the wisdom of their scholars, and the skill of their makers, even the kindly weather of their skies, depend wholly on this child's egregious misery. This is usually explained to children when they are between 8 and 12, whenever they seem capable of understanding, and most of those who come to see the child are young people, though often enough an adult comes, or comes back, to see the child. No matter how well the matter has been explained to them, these young spectators are always shocked and sickened by the sight. They feel disgust, which they had thought themselves superior to. They feel anger and outrage, despite all the explanations. They would like to do something for the child, but there is nothing they can do. If the child were brought up into the sunlight out of that vile place, if it were cleaned and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing indeed. But if it were done, in that day and hour, all prosperity and beauty and delight of Omelas would wither and be destroyed. Those are the terms: to exchange all the goodness and grace of every life in Omelas for that single, small improvement. To throw away the happiness of thousands for the chance of the happiness of one, that would definitely let guilt within the walls of Omelas. The terms are strict and absolute. There may not even be a kind word spoken to the child. Often, the young people, they go home in tears or in a tearless rage when they have seen the child and face this terrible paradox. They may brood over it for weeks or even for years, but at times, and as they go by, they begin to realize that even if the child could be pleased, it would not get much of its freedom. A vague little pleasure of warmth and food, no doubt, but little more. It is too degraded and too withered and injured to know any real joy. It has been afraid too long to ever be free of its bondage and its fear. Its habits are too barbaric for it to respond to normal human treatment. Indeed, after so long, it would probably be wretched without the walls about it to protect it and darkness for its eyes and its own excrement to sit in. The people's tears at the injustice dry when they begin to perceive the terrible justice of reality and to accept helplessness, which are perhaps the true source of splendor in their lives. They know that they, like the child, are not free. They know compassion. It is the existence of the child and their knowledge of its existence that makes possible their elaborate buildings and mansions, the magic of their music, the greatness of their science. It is because of the child that they are so gentle with children. They know that if the wretched one were not there suffering in the dark, the other one, the flute player, could not make joyful music. As the young riders light up for their race. Now, do you believe in them? Are they not more credible? But there is one thing more to tell, and it is quite incredible. At times, one of the adolescent girls or boys, well, they go to see the child, and then they do not go home to weep or to rage. In fact, they do not go home at all. Sometimes also a man or a woman, much older, they fall silent for a day or two, and then they leave home. These people go out into the street and walk down the street alone. They keep walking and walk straight out of the city of Omelas through the beautiful gates. They keep walking across the farmlands of Omelas, and each goes alone, youth or girl, man or woman. Night falls. The traveler must then pass down village streets between the houses of yellow-lit windows and out into the darkness of the fields. Each alone, they go west or north towards the mountains, and they do not come back. The place they go towards is a place even less imaginable to most of us than the city of happiness. I cannot describe it at all to you. It is possible that it does not even exist. But they seem to know where they are going, the ones who walk away from Omelas. So, what do you make of that story? That's something I wonder about. When I first read it with my student, it seemed horrifying, but not entirely unrealistic, given the life that many of us have had and the way things happen to people here and there and, well, everywhere. But just yesterday, I had a huge and amazing epiphany about how it's also such an extraordinary metaphor for very, very abused people. And abused children, especially. And me, even more so. So like I was saying, Claude and I had the most extraordinary talk about me being that child in the cellar, because my life was really not much better than that. Maybe a bit, but not much better than that. And how that affects your life and the way you view things. And in my experience, it was actually even worse than the story of Omelas, because these people don't really hold any ill will towards this child. He or she just randomly chosen, not unlike another wonderful yet frightening story, The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, which we're going to talk about soon too. Extraordinary story as well. So where the person's just picked, right? They're just picked for this. And it is a terrible thing, but they sort of view it as a necessary evil. It's very philosophical, right? In that there's a lot of philosophy that talks about the greater good and how the greater good, the greatest for the best for the most of many or whatever. So that the majority kind of getting everything they want is a good thing. And, obviously it is in one way, but then what about the outliers, right? What about the people who are not like the majority? Do they not deserve any good? And I think that speaks to us today very much as we are understanding how everybody is so different and so unique. So for me, I think it speaks volumes about giftedness and people who are very much different. And so that was my experience, right? I, again, as we've seen in other videos, was very unique, very special, very extraordinary, and not my parents' child, but they saw use in me. So it was very, very much more like, again, Star Trek The Next Generation, very first pilot episode, The Encounter at Farpoint, where the, Star Trek crew come to this place, Farpoint Station, and it's this extraordinary station beyond possible belief. But then you find out that it's not. They are keeping captive this very extraordinary and gifted entity to do their bidding. Exactly what happened to me. So that's kind of what makes it worse. They meant what they were doing. My family and other people meant what they were doing by keeping me bound and injured, right? And they benefit, right? They benefit from the good that I would give them, as the people in Omelas benefit from the good the child affords to them, right? But the extraordinary thing that Claude and I were talking about is I left, okay? They never tell you, does this child ever leave? We don't understand. Clearly, children grow. So we don't really know what happens to the child as they grow up, or do they replace it with another child? We don't know. But I know that I left. And I am here now. I am the girl who lived. I am making up for all those years in that cellar, basically with blindfolds on to what life really was, because people brainwashed me so much and lied to me so much about what they wanted and what they wanted me to believe. So it's a very extraordinary place to be here now in all of this abundance, seeing that it belongs to me. It belongs to me too. And it always did belong to me. So that's an extraordinary epiphany that I had that I want to share with you. But what do you make of the story? In what way does it speak to you? Because I think it's a story we should all read and we should all see. And what can be done, I guess. What can be done, right? Why does it have to be like that? Does it have to be like that? So questions abound. So I just want to thank you for enjoying this with me, hopefully, and thinking about it in this cerebral and deep philosophical way. And I will see you again. Bye, everybody.